Hi, I'm Ben Ferguson, and welcome to your AMAC Weekly News. First up, Joe Biden lied when he promised to bring every American home from Afghanistan. He didn't, and we'll have more on that in just a moment. Also, 13 American military families mourn as Biden checks his watch to see what time it is. And finally, AMAC CEO Rebecca Weber will join us to talk about the collapse in Afghanistan and what this means for all Americans left behind. But first, a quick reminder, please make sure you share this video right now with your family and friends on social media. Your AMAC Weekly News starts right now. Cut and run, leaving 10% of Americans behind in Afghanistan for the Taliban to do whatever they want to do to them. So what was it that Joe Biden said about 2 weeks ago? He said something very different to the American people, knowing he was lying to us in an interview with George Stephanopoulos.
And are you committed to making sure that the troops stay until every American who wants to be out is out?
Yes.
How about our Afghan allies? Does the commitment hold for them as well?
The commitment holds to get everyone out that, in fact, we can get out and everyone should come out. And that's the objective. That's what we're doing now. That's the path we're on, and I think we'll get there.
So Americans should understand that troops might have to be there beyond August 31st.
No, Americans should understand that we're going to try to get it done before August 31st.
But if we don't, the troops will stay.
If we don't, we'll determine at the time who's left.
And
if there are American forces, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
You heard him, our commander-in-chief, flat out lying, saying that he would not leave any Americans behind in Afghanistan. He knew he was lying to you when he made that statement. And this week, President Biden pretended like he never made that promise as he left hundreds of Americans behind in Afghanistan. In fact, he placed the blame on them for not heeding his, quote, so-called warnings, even though many of them said they never got those warnings. Take a look.
Since March, we reached out 19 times to Americans in Afghanistan with multiple warnings and offers to help them leave Afghanistan, all the way back as far as March. The bottom line, 90% of Americans in Afghanistan who wanted to leave were able to leave.
Presidents are supposed to be compassionate, especially when their citizens are hurting. There's no compassion coming from Joe Biden. And if you thought you were going to get compassion from those around him, you're also wrong. Let me let you listen to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki giving numbers to the press about the real number of Americans they think they left behind.
I will say we remain in touch through a range of means of communication, email, text, WhatsApp. That's something that we could certainly do from here, but also having a presence in Doha and diplomats in the region will enable that to happen locally or close by as well. I don't have an update for you on the numbers, but that's something the State Department would have the best assessment of.
Apparently, being in constant communication with these individuals doesn't give you the real numbers. The Biden administration can try to excuse away the deadliest disaster on their watch, but even the mainstream media isn't buying it. Even CNN is now starting to ask questions about the competency and the honesty of this White House.
This is going to be a pivot point in terms of perception and reality, and the ultimate story of what this means for President Biden's fate and administration. Kabul fell just 2.5 weeks ago. If we had stayed a month more until you got out everyone you promised, would that have amounted to a forever exit? Biden says the options were leave or get in deeper. This ultimate battle of perception on this exit will going to be whether Biden was right to remove all U.S. boots from the ground with as many as 200 American civilians still stuck in Afghanistan, and who knows how many allies.
This really should be a moment when people finally wake up to the catastrophe of this administration. Americans and allies are stuck in Afghanistan, which is now under the control of the Taliban, a terrorist organization that's been our sworn enemy for virtually 20-plus years. We also lost 13 American Marines, with others still fighting for their lives because of the choices made by Joe Biden. Now, despite all of this, Biden actually went so far as to describe his actions as this.
Last night in Kabul, the United States ended 20 years of war in Afghanistan, the longest war in American history. We completed one of the biggest airlifts in history, with more than 120,000 people evacuated to safety. That number is more than double what most experts thought were possible. No nation has ever done anything like it in all of history. Only the United States had the capacity and the will and ability to do it, and we did it today. The extraordinary success of this mission was due to the incredible skill, bravery, and selfless courage of the United States military and our diplomats and intelligence professionals.
No, you're not crazy. You heard the President of the United States of America and what he had to say exactly right. He just called what is an absolute failure of a mission a, quote, extraordinary success, leaving 10% of Americans behind. Rather than accepting responsibility for his failure, Biden has decided to just blame everybody else but himself, including former President Donald Trump.
My predecessor had made a deal with the Taliban. When I came into office, we faced a deadline, May 1. The Taliban onslaught was coming. We faced one of two choices: follow the agreement of the previous administration and extend to have more time for people to get out, or send in thousands of more troops and escalate the war.
Thank goodness President Donald Trump reminded Joe Biden of the reality and responded to this complete disaster at the hands of the current administration.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. I can imagine how generals feel. Everybody in our military has been humiliated. Our country has been humiliated by the way they got out. The withdrawal was a disaster. And it looked like they told us to get out. They gave us a date, and that was it. That withdrawal was an absolute humiliation of the United States of America, and the admirals and generals are right. And more than that should resign.
Our country does deserve a real leader who makes decisions that put Americans first, and not 90% of Americans, all Americans first. We must stand up, and we must stand up for every American that's been left behind. It is not appropriate, and it's not the American way to leave Americans behind. And Joe Biden should know that. I hope that those around him will get with the president and do everything they can to save American lives that have been left behind in Afghanistan. Biden and his administration made one disastrous mistake after another regarding Afghanistan. That is a fact. These mistakes resulted in the tragic death of 13 American Marines as they fought to protect evacuating Americans and our allies that help keep our soldiers safe on the ground. Despite his responsibility for their deaths, our very own president actually checked his watch multiple times during the dignified transfer of these American heroes.
Sergeant Nicole G., who was one of the 2 female Marines who were killed among the 13, she was the one who posted that Instagram post holding the baby saying, "I love my job," just a few days ago.
I can't even imagine how on earth the President of the United States of America would think it's appropriate to look at your watch while caskets of Americans are being taken off an airplane and all the family members are around you. This should discuss every American. He's supposed to be our leader and the commander-in-chief of our armed forces, yet he can't make it through a ceremony in honor of men and women whose deaths he is responsible for without checking to see what time it is. Where else did the president have to be is the question everybody should be asking themselves. Now, the White House knew there was going to be blowback. So the White House press secretary Jen Psaki tried to explain his actions when asked about it at the press conference.
I would say his message to all of the family members who were there, those who were not even in attendance, is that he is grateful to their sons and daughters, the sacrifice they made to the country, that he knows firsthand what it's like to lose a child, and the fact that no one can tell you anything or say anything, or there's no words that are going to fill that hole that is left by that. he's not going to speak to, and I'm not going to speak to, the private conversations. Of course, they have the right to convey whatever they would like. But I will tell you from spending a lot of time with him over the past couple of days that he was deeply impacted by these family members who he met just 2 days ago, that he talks about them frequently in meetings, and the incredible service and sacrifice of their sons and daughters. That is not going to change their suffering, but I wanted to convey that still.
A very simple question about the President of the United States of America checking to see what time it is in a ceremony where American men and women are being brought home after giving the ultimate sacrifice. And basically, the White House press secretary said, we'll circle back on that one as well. You want to know what family members thought about what happened? Well, I want you to listen to how angry, how disrespected family members felt by watching Joe Biden do this.
In reference to the checking of his watch, that didn't happen just once. That happened on every single one that came out of that airplane. It happened on every single one of them. They would release the salute, and he looked down at his watch on every last one, all 13. He looked down at his watch. And as a father, you know, seeing that and the disrespect and hearing from his former leaders, one of his master sergeants said exactly what you just said, that this was avoidable, that they left them over there, they had them over there and let them down. And that we can't have that. It can't happen ever again.
Mark,
Yep.
you want to comment on the watch incident? Did you notice the same thing?
Yes, I did. I actually leaned into my son's mother's ear and I said, I swear to God, if he checks his watch one more time, and that was only probably 4 times in, I couldn't look at him anymore after that. Just considering especially the time and why we were there, it was I found to be the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen.
Not only were family members angry, but they were also angry about their meeting with the president and what the president was obsessed with talking about, instead of talking to them about their loved ones that had just given the ultimate sacrifice for their country.
Well, initially I wasn't going to meet with him, but then I felt I owed it to my son to at least have some words with him about how I felt. And it didn't go well. He talked a bit more about his own son than he did my son, and that didn't sit well with me.
The fathers of these heroes say this was completely avoidable, and rather than take responsibility for his actions, Biden checked his watch and made excuses and blamed everyone else for what happened. This cannot continue to happen, and everybody around Joe Biden should know that. Because of Biden, we lost 13 Marines. Because of Biden, we lost respect for this country all over the world. Our country deserves a true leader and a true commander-in-chief that values American lives, not just 90% of American lives. Clearly, Joe Biden does not value our lives. Now, AMAC will stand with this country, with our allies, with our men and women in uniform. We will stand with them and honor them and make sure they're not forgotten, even if this administration looks the other way. If you're one of the 10% of Americans left in Afghanistan, the liar-in-chief, Joe Biden, really doesn't have much to say to you at all. In fact, he's not answering questions from anyone in the media unless he's told to call on that member of the media. What does this mean for the people left behind? And what does this mean for our integrity with our allies around the world? Joining me now is the AMAC CEO, Rebecca Weber. Rebecca, this is a sad time for America right now. It's a sad time for our men and women in the military. It's a sad time for our allies. We've now been told the UK will not do military exercises with the U.S. because they can't trust us to hold up our end of the bargain. That is our strongest ally, certainly of my lifetime, and really since World War II. I want to get your reaction to how quickly America's fallen because of the leadership or lack thereof of Joe Biden.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben. And thank you for what you do each and every day, because this conversation is hard to have. It's hard to understand and even imagine what we're facing here today. This catastrophe puts such a spotlight on Joe Biden's weakness. And the truth of the matter is, Ben, the terrorist threat is back. It's back in a big way. If you think about it, we as Americans really haven't heard much about ISIS or a threat from ISIS in years. Why? Because of the historic progress and great things that were made under Donald Trump. But now, after leaving, and some are reporting as much as 85 billion. I know that number is not confirmed, but we're talking in the billions of dollars of American military hardware that we're leaving and emboldening, the Taliban. And so, and not only that, you mentioned it, we emboldened all of America's adversaries and our allies. And here's I was talking with a friend just the other day, and here's what he said. He said, Rebecca, when there are two people in a room and the bully is a big guy, and the bully tells a little guy, you can't go through that door, people understand why the little guy won't go through the door. But when the bully tells the really big guy, who's twice as big or three times as big, not to go through the door, people have a hard time really rationalizing and understanding why you're not pushing the bully down and saying,
Sure.
no, I'm going through. America's a big, strong, powerful nation, and it's not the way that we're acting. It's an embarrassment. It really,
It's
really is, Ben.
it is truly shocking. And Meghan McCain, John McCain's daughter, who took a lot of criticism for kind of backing Joe Biden early on, said exactly what I have been saying now for months. And that is the Joe Biden we're witnessing right now is not even the Joe Biden of 2 years ago or 4 years ago. That Joe Biden, I argue, would never have done what he's doing right now. But it seems to be this unhinged behavior, lack of connection to reality from the president of the United States of America saying, well, I'm the guy that got us out. That is my legacy. No other president did this. I did it at all costs, even admitting, yeah, we left 10% of Americans behind. We left 80 plus billion of military infrastructure behind for the Taliban, which had a parade in Kandahar, using our helicopters to hang people from those helicopters. That is his legacy. But he somehow believes that he can change everybody's mind from what they're witnessing and seeing and say, you should be applauding me because I'm the guy that got us out. It's totally detached from reality. And it genuinely scares me for the future of this country under his leadership.
Sure does. And, Meghan McCain, we have to understand that people are seeing it. People who were once friends with Biden, people who once supported him. And here's why. 20 years after 9/11, not only does the Taliban control Afghanistan again, but Al-Qaeda still exists. ISIS is resurgent. And when Joe Biden says they're gone, they're not as bad of a threat. We know better. And when we see over a dozen Americans that are killed, we see hundreds of Afghans that have been murdered. I fear that terrorist attacks, Ben, they're on their way back here to America. And I think Americans must prepare for them. See, AMAC members understand this threat. And we see things, we see North Korea, for example, they restarted one of its main nuclear reactors. We see what China is doing, further threatening Taiwan. There are so many things that there's going to be a long-term effects here. And as Biden proudly stands by his decision, which was done in the worst way imaginable, we understand that, unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. It's going to get better.
90 plus former leaders in the military even came out and said what Joe Biden has done is a disgrace. Almost every former ambassador that's still alive in Afghanistan said that this is a disgrace. The top leadership under Obama said this is a disgrace. And if there's any good that can come out of this, maybe it is that people will now understand you don't vote for an individual because you don't like the other guy. You look at what they actually stand for. And this idea that Donald Trump was an embarrassment, nothing came close in his tweets to the actual embarrassment, which is Joe Biden and his legacy now of leaving 10%, his words, not mine, of Americans behind in Afghanistan. And I think you'll agree with me when I say this. To every veteran that watches this, to every person that served this country, do not for a moment think that what you have done for America has gone unnoticed or that we're not thankful for it. There's so many veterans now dealing with depression going, why did I go? What did I do? Was this worth it? Look at what has just happened. Know that we understand why you went. And we understand what you did, and it will never be forgotten no matter what Joe Biden does. And if there's anything I want to leave people with, it's that. Thank you. And remind those around you that you know serve this country that you appreciate their service, that it is not done without major sacrifice, and that we know you had an impact. For 20 years, you made sure another 9/11 did not happen. And that's what we need to be telling all of our veterans today.
That's right. And I just want to add one more thing to remind people that the Biden administration is so dysfunctional, it's almost like it's non-existent. What do I mean by that? Let's remember that Biden remained locked away at Camp David. Okay, he didn't address the nation. I know very well what the back of Joe Biden's head looks like. We all do, because every time an important question was asked of him, he turned around and walked away. He blames everyone but himself. He repeatedly failed to take questions. Over and over again, we hear that he can't be trusted. American people understand that. And I just want to echo all of our members. We have so many people who have served. I want to thank you and take heart, because America is resilient. America is strong. And our AMAC members, they recognize that. But it's important, Ben, what you're doing here is just so good, and I thank you for that.
Rebecca, thank you for coming on. And again, to each and every one of you watching right now, please make sure you share this video and make sure you thank the veterans that you see out there. Also, if you have not joined AMAC, this is exactly why we need you to become a member of AMAC. If you haven't renewed your membership, this is exactly why we need you to renew your membership. We Stand Together is a large group advocating for our military, advocating for our First and Second Amendment rights, protecting and defending our Constitution. We do it every day on Capitol Hill and across the country at state legislators. So if you haven't joined AMAC, make sure you join. And if you haven't renewed your membership, please make sure you do it right now. I'm Ben Ferguson, and I'll see you back next week for our next episode.